This is the match you have to win. You have to beat one of these players who are arguably some of the best players that we have in the entire StarCraft 2 circuits. And it's like, okay, well, you know, got to make it happen. But Kev, let's go ahead, jump in, introduce these players, because we have up here in the top right-hand corner, the very fitting Team Liquid Blue. He is the Terran player, Clem.
And that, of course, means that on the bottom left side of the beautiful Pillars of Gold, we are going to take a look at the main base with the man who's representing Team Big, Mr. Mauer. It is ShoWTimE.
And I think one of my favorite things about, of course, ShoWTimE versus Clem is also just the size differential that we don't get to see at an offline or an online event. I love whenever these two face off against each other and they go up on stage and they shake hands and you just see like the massive difference in the size and you're like, you know, they're equal in StarCraft.
So to go back to your previous question real quick, these two guys have played a ridiculous amount of times against each other. I think a grand total of 158 official maps. The score, 80 for Clem, 78 for ShoWTimE. I don't think it gets much closer than that. And these are not just series of years ago, right? Even in 2020, which we could truly say was the rise of Clem. We knew he was good in 2019 already. We saw quite a bit of it. And in 2020, they have played like 21 times against each other, I believe. Clem having a minor winner record, winning 14 of those 21 encounters. Even in this year, they already played 3 times against each other. They know one another very well. It's pretty 50-50 minor edge to Clem, but that just really goes to show how cool this match is.
Yeah, and I think one of the biggest takeaways we've seen from just watching their matches happen again and again and again is that ShoWTimE, of course, being the wall, has actually, I feel like, adapted a little bit over the course of the last year. I feel like ShoWTimE has become the player that, of course, is still unbelievably good with macro games. He's still unbelievably solid when it goes to the later stages, but he has been mixing in a few more of those cheeky all-ins and everything. And I feel like specifically versus Clem, I have seen ShoWTimE been able to like mix in a few two-base all-ins and stuff that have kind of put Clem a little bit more on the defensive, which is a nice change of pace for him.
Yep, I'm absolutely expecting a little Phoenix play here and there as well, because ShoWTimE has been pretty vocal about liking Phoenixes. Now, before we start talking about this Reaper that's running to the other side of the map, one last thing I want to say is that obviously we had multiple circuit stops throughout the year, and Clem really outperformed ShoWTimE pretty badly in those. We had summer, fall, and winter. Clem is results, top 3, top 2, and winning winter. That's really good. ShoWTimE, we know that he's good. He always is considered to be one of the best players in Europe, but those events didn't really work out for him with a top 12, top 8, and top 6. So clearly some of the big events not really going ShoWTimE's way this year, but throughout the year he still gathered more than enough points to comfortably make it to Katowice. Let's just hope that this is the time that he picks.
Yeah, and of course, like you were saying, we do see the formations of these builders and everything with the Twilight first into Robo there for ShoWTimE. But I do just want to like touch upon what you were saying. It's just the fact that Clem has effectively cemented himself up there with Raynor and Serral to a degree, right? And ShoWTimE is the guy who's like, we think should be also capable of moving up there, and we have such high expectations for him because of that, but he just hasn't quite been able to. I think having a really good performance at Katowice is how you do start pulling yourself back up there. But Hellion and Reaper both managed to make their way on in. Already 3 worker kills with just a Hellion and a Reaper. This is already a lot of damage.
Yep, and I think one addition, no, a misclick there, a tiny misclick by Clem, but he still gets the probe, so he gets 4 probes in total. I do want to say that these are little things that can absolutely start bothering people. You know, I had a little interview with Clem, but I also had a little chat with him just off the record. No, not that special. Now I'm going to bring it on the record. Terrible for me. But now basically I asked him, he's like, hey, what happened in this and this series, you know? Like, didn't really go that well. He's like, I can't really explain it. He's like, some days I just don't really feel it. He's like, it's not that I don't want to. He's like, I just misclick a lot. And even though he still got the probe there, so no big deal. But the fact that he accidentally shot at the Nexus, I hope that these things don't go into his mind, because it is really important for Clem that he gets off to a good start. Like a lot of people say, this boy is really driven on momentum. If he's feeling it, he's playing out of this world. But if he starts kind of talking to himself where things don't go well, things can go down south real quick. We do have this medevac sneaking into the back of the natural and should be able to find a couple of additional probes, but not a whole lot of damage, Fear Dragon.
Yeah, really good movement there from ShoWTimE. He moves Observer through the kind of center path where the medevac actually was walking through as well, so he gets vision of it there. He also gets vision of it with the pylon at the third, so he has total vision of it and exactly the angle that the medevac comes in from, is able to defend it really, really well. Now, ShoWTimE is going to move across the map. He has his Observer over here ready to give him high ground vision, but there's also a Widow Mine over there. So funny enough, the Widow Mine might actually act as a little bit of the immediate notification that the Stalkers are coming in from this angle, because I don't think the Stalkers just want to blink in on top of the Widow Mine.
Nope, Clem should be able to save this mine. Clem, what are we looking at? Okay, I'm actually very surprised he didn't unburrow it. Maybe he was afraid that if he would unburrow it, that the Stalkers would blink in. But I think he'd be fine there with 8 Marines and a medevac, because then obviously if the Stalkers blink in, they cannot micro defensively anymore. So, I'm a little bit surprised that Clem didn't save that mine. I want to say that's a tiny bit sloppy, but it is what it is. ShoWTimE went up to 4 gases very quickly, and I'm kind of happy to see that. Like, I don't hate Twilight Council openings in this matchup. All the Koreans still love it, so it's clearly still very good. But I think the style where you just stay on Zealots and Stalkers for a long time, it doesn't seem to do as well as it did a year ago. So I actually kind of prefer these builds coming out of our Protoss, where you take the 3rd and 4th gas a little bit quicker, and you get much easier access into your Colossus stack.
Yeah, those Colossus is going to become a linchpin for the defense against some of the later attacks coming on in. But Clem is not done with the medevac harassment. He's coming in from the north side, but ShoWTimE already has his Observer positioned over there. He's starting to move some of his Stalkers into position. Actually ends up just recalling over here. So that is going to be enough to deflect the medevac. The wall remains unbroken so far.
Good scan there. Clem spotted the Observer immediately. It moved a little bit. And these are the things you really want to do, because as ShoWTimE, you don't want to build extra Observers now. No, you feel like you need another Colossus, you need another Immortal. I think he's relying on force fields here. He wants to prevent this push from showing up. But Clem is actually taking a different route, and this means ShoWTimE is going to be very awkwardly out of position. He is going to spot it though with his probe. But I wonder if Clem just goes for it immediately. Nah, he goes for a defensive setup.
Well, the Raven has plenty of energy for interference matrices, and there's only 2 Colossus over here. Not that many Zealots either, and Charge is about to complete just in the nick of time for all of this to start working out. Medevac tries to go over to the main base. It manages to get a full unload before the Stalkers even manage to hit that Medevac, but do get a snipe off on that. Still has to deal with the Marines, but in the meanwhile, doing a good job with the 3rd.
Yep, really good defense, I think, so far by ShoWTimE. I don't think he's over-committing, and Clem was obviously targeting a gateway there, which is a bit useless. Look at the amount of damage those Marines did to that gateway. What does that accomplish, Fear Dragon? Absolutely nothing. So far, a fantastic hold by ShoWTimE, but he still needs to take care of the main army on the right side. But Clem also knows that he can't stick around too much longer.
Yeah, because now all those units that were in the main base for ShoWTimE feel comfortable moving over to the 3rd to try and help out. Siegecheng wailing away at these Zealots, but finally the distance looks like it's going to be closed. Interference is just coming out on both of the Colossus over here. He's trying to gun them down, but the shield battery overcharges a bit too much.
Yep, I mean, good job with the Raven, of course. ShoWTimE wants to get that medevac, does not get it, and actually ends up losing a couple of additional Stalkers. Even the final Stalker going down to the Marauder, which all of a sudden made that still a pretty good trade for Clem, who of course does have 3 bases himself. At this point they are up and running. Oh, this is a fun one, man. You can really see that these guys are evenly matched. I do feel that Clem has made a couple of minor beauty mistakes, but nothing really game ending. At the end of the day, that fight in the bottom right, it still went quite well. Now he's got a double drop. Don't forget about the Observer he picked off before. That's why ShoWTimE didn't see this coming at all, and this is where the damage starts to pile up real quick.
This is the first real bit of damage that Clem has been able to do with these drop harassments. He's going to be able to find a Colossus as well, since there's just no support, and the warp gates look like they were on cooldown until just now. A few Zealots get warped in, but at the same time, double medevac makes its way behind the 3rd. Not sure that this was going to find quite as much, but even finding a few workers is not too shabby.
This is really good. This is where Clem starts hitting his stride. He's in his element. He's starting to fight damage left, right, and center. ShoWTimE also striking back on the other side of him, but look at the amount of bio units that Clem left at home. Look at these supplies as well. Clem now taking a 50 supply lead. That Widow Mine was so useful, by the way, connecting with those Zealots, which allowed the bio just to take out that Colossus without any losses whatsoever. I am really feeling the pace that Clem is pushing so far.
I think this is just the scariest thing about Clem. I know we were talking about momentum for Clem in a series or in a day. This is an important match for him because if Clem really performs well in this first series, there's a good indicator that he's going to perform well in the other series. But even in a single game, I feel like Clem is just so good aggressively with momentum. He is the player that never gives you more than like 15-20 seconds usually of breathing time, and then you already see the next push making its way across the map or another drop being queued up, not giving your opponent time to breathe so that you finally find that little crack in the armor.
This is a lot of Terran supply, and that Raven is still alive. You don't see that super often, that the Raven survives the first push, and this is very scary for ShoWTimE, because now he still has to worry about a potential interference matrix, or even an anti-armor missile landing in the heart of all those Zealots could be pretty devastating. I mean, at least with those Colossi in the right position, you could say that ShoWTimE should be fine, but I don't think he can take 4 bases anytime soon.
Very big concave at the top of that ramp with the Inferior Matrix that you were talking about coming out of the Colossus. I mean, ShoWTimE just lacks any of his firepower that he needs to take on that army. Clem is going to back off, satisfied with just denying any potential for that 4th base for a bit, as he actually, I think, has his own 4th base finishing up back at home.
Yep, obviously in a beautiful economic position, right? The Terran being 2 workers ahead at this point over the Protoss. That's something you love to see if you're a Terran player. Clem throws down a scan in the bottom right. He knows that ShoWTimE needs to go up to 4 bases, so he knows where it is as well. ShoWTimE at this point a little bit indecisive. He kind of moved out. That could potentially open the front door to the natural. If I was Clem, I wouldn't mind just stimming up there. I mean, it's always a bit scary, but I don't think it would have been the worst call.
Yeah, I think he didn't know that the army was already moving out, so he was like, are you sitting in that natural? Are you trying to concave on me? But yeah, he's going to play it safe because he knows that this is going to be a great move. Getting a snipe off on this 4th base, again, this is going to become brutal for ShoWTimE. He is just going to fall further and further down in army supply, as long as Clem is able to start trading out now that he's hitting that max out point.
Yeah, but what I love the most from Clem is that not only is he finding a good use of putting that army supply lead into a bigger advantage by keeping ShoWTimE on 3 bases, he's also transitioning non-stop at home, as Mapu is showing us right now. Ghost Economy has been up for a while. Even the Enhanced Shockwaves upgrade is about to finish up, which means these EMPs are going to be massive. And on top of that, we already have quite a few Vikings out on the map. Clem is playing a marvelous game 1 so far.
Oh, that anti-armor missile also coating a lot of those units on the back line. Now the Colossus coming in from the high ground, gonna try and get some damage now, but the Viking count looks like it's enough to take out at least one of the Colossus. The Marauders fighting at a choke point. A lot of this bio is not actually attacking, but they're just maybe a little bit too much here for Clem. Even as he ends up retreating back, you can see Clem still up 60 supply, and he takes game 1.
Yeah, almost a little bit of an anti-timing there right before +2 attack finished up and +2 armor for all the bio units. On the other end, ShoWTimE also didn't have +2 yet, but Clem was just pushing a very, very high pace there. And I really think it all starts with sniping that Observer, because that allows the additional double drop to deal a little bit more damage. And finding probes is nice, but the moment you start finding a Colossus, that's where you know you're golden as a Terran player, because at that point, the army supply just keeps skyrocketing for Clem, gets a 40-50 supply lead. I love how he split up his army. I think Clem played very well in this first game.
Yeah, I love watching Clem play because he is an aggressive player, so he's always going to make stuff happen and everything, but he really just showcases why it's so powerful to be the aggressor, because you can, of course, continue committing and you keep trying to find little bits of damage. And remember, ShoWTimE was actually defending against a lot of the earlier attacks pretty well. The first drop really didn't get a whole lot done at all. In fact, it kind of didn't go well for Clem. Even the second or third drop didn't really go so well, but like when that final medevac came in with a double drop and he got the damage done, it makes up for all of that, because when you're the aggressor, it's like you have the potential for a lot more than you're probably gonna lose.
That's often all that Clem needs, right? One little opening and everything snowballs from there. I really like what you said in the middle of the game about like how important it is for Clem to win this first best of 3. Obviously, this is a very important best of 3 for ShoWTimE too. But I'm less worried about ShoWTimE keeping everything together and still playing his A game in the following best of 3s if he would fall here. I don't know if that's going to be good enough, because he goes up against literally the best Terran players in the world. But I do believe that no matter what happens here, I think ShoWTimE will still bring his absolute best in the following series. With Clem, I'm a little bit more concerned about that. Like, if Clem would have a very rocky, bumpy first best of 3, I could be like, oof, this could very well be it, you know? It may just go downhill from here, but... so for ShoWTimE, I don't think there's a man overboard yet, but this was absolutely the start that this young man was looking for.
Absolutely, and this young man is going to be starting down here in the bottom right-hand side of Romanticide, sitting up 1-0 from Team Liquid. He is Clem.
And in the top left side, we're taking a look at the main base of our German Protoss. He's handsome, he's representing Team Big. It is the wall himself, ShoWTimE. Wouldn't really say that the wall crumbled. It's more just that Clem was just displaying some great army movement, I'd say. Often we see Terran players having like a 20, 30, 35 army supply advantage. But then they just kind of look at a bunch of Protoss units and they stare at it and they try to take a fight near a battery and it's like, well, I can't do anything with it, or I can't drop because Protoss has vision. I really think that Clem displayed just masterful movement around the map. Having an army supply advantage is one thing, but putting it into good use is a whole nother story. Clem played awesome.
Absolutely. I do want to actually also point out one thing our wonderful observer Mapu was also trying to show us, is that the Viking, I believe, was able to kill off that War Prism that was doing that Zealot harassment earlier on. And that's, I want to actually, even though the War Prism of course ends up dying, that's not something ShoWTimE wants to have happen. I love that ShoWTimE has those ways of fighting back, and it's kind of like taking that defense to the next level. Sometimes one of the best ways to increase your defensive capabilities is to be offensive, because it's like you're forcing your opponents to keep more units at home for a little bit longer, and you're even diverting some of their attention away. A lot of those bios units really do need to be micro to get the best value from them. So if you have a bunch of Zealots running around in their main base, good chance you might actually be able to snipe off a few more of those bio units in your own main base, and hey, maybe even kill off that medevac.
I totally agree, but it's also something that Protoss players need to be a little bit careful with. Like, I think if you're on 4 bases, you can always do that, right? Because then you know that you always have enough stuff at home. At 3 bases, when you start losing a Prism, when you start losing 6 to 8 Zealots in the main base of Terran, you can't just be like, well, that's nice, I bought some time for myself, because those are still units that you also kind of need to make your main army a bit more powerful. Because we saw it at the end, Clem's army was simply way bigger and way more powerful than ShoWTimE's army. And then all of a sudden, Zealots that you warp in the Terran main base, that's cool and all, but they could have come in very handy at home. So you need to be very careful with that kind of stuff as a Protoss.
Actually, yeah, that's a very good point, because the exact timing that double medevac drop came in was when the Zealots were warped into the main base, and because of that, he didn't have any weapons available for the immediate main base defense, which led to the first Colossus getting sniped and everything. So, of course, that was all game number 1. And Kev, you kind of hinted at this a little bit, but we do have a Stargate opening, and you were talking about how ShoWTimE has been a fan of the Phoenix lately.
Yeah, a lot of European Protosses are, and we see Trap do it every now and then too. Now, of course, this could potentially be an Oracle opening, guys. That wouldn't be the craziest thing in the world, but I know that he likes Phoenixes. A lot of Protoss players just feel that right now Phoenix is a pretty optimal opening against Terran, just because it gives you a lot more map control, it gives you a lot more map presence, and the most annoying thing in the world, wow, look at these adepts go, by the way. They're just going to town on everything.
Yeah,
did the Reaper
soften up the
guy too at home against the other adept? Or did we have no?
I don't know if I saw any of the Reapers, but I mean, these adepts have just done so much damage. They killed off 2 Marines.
Yeah, the Reaper.
Looks like it did get the Reaper. Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, that's actually a beautiful start. It seems like a single probe did go down on the side of ShoWTimE, so at least Clem got a little something. And he did get the scout, so then I'm kind of okay with it, right? Losing a Reaper for a probe but not getting the scout, that's not a good trade for Terran. But knowing that you go up against a Stargate is massive, because if he didn't know that, he could potentially load up 8 Marines in a medevac again, fly to the other side of the map, and then there is no way home, mate. Because if there are 3 Phoenixes on your tail, that medevac will never make it home safely.
All right, Phoenix gonna come on forward. Oh, the Widow Mines, they unburrowed right as the Phoenix came on in. The Phoenix is actually gonna get some chip damage on that medevac, which I feel like normally wouldn't be the biggest deal in the world, but you have to remember, when there's a bunch of Phoenix running around the map, yeah, things like this make it so hard to actually get that medevac across the map.
I actually really love this little dance. Like, this is something that's kind of quite obvious for us. We know what's happening. But if you are playing Protoss, you have a Phoenix opening. You're like, he should never drop me. That makes no sense. On the other hand, if your one Phoenix flies in, it takes some damage, and then you temporarily lose vision of the medevac, things could still be a little bit scary. Because of one thing, you're like, is it out on the map? You start looking for it. Maybe Clem is just going up to 3 bases. So the fact that the second Phoenix of ShoWTimE took a very different path and flew straight into the medevac, that's massive. Like, this is kind of what I mean. ShoWTimE knows there is a potential for it to be out on the map, but he can't be certain, and he barely misses it.
Very, very nicely timed there for Clem. He's going to be very happy with how this works out as he sees the Phoenix show up in his main base. And of course, he's going to be losing a few SCVs here and there. But his medevac did safely get to the other side of the map. And he even has a bunch of units moving out through the center, which ShoWTimE is going to spot. He's probably going to bring those Phoenix back home to help defend against that. But, well, Adepts do react pretty quickly, and so do the probes to the Widow Mine drop.
A little bit of... Oh, he's retargeting everything. ShoWTimE can mine, but that's his mine drop in the main base too. What's happening in the main? All right, this is already dealing a lot of damage. It's not about the amount of probes you kill. It's about the amount of chaos that you're creating here. And at the same time, the main army is showing up. The shield battery not totally ready yet. We can't lose anymore to the Cyclone. Oh my goodness, what a save by ShoWTimE.
Oh my god, both these players doing some really, really sick micro there with the Immortal and the Cyclone. The target fire with the Immortal on the Cyclone, almost managing to get it. Another one of those Cyclones is still alive though, and is going to continue to try and do some damage. The Widow Mines in the main base finally gets cleaned up. And I think ShoWTimE has enough to defend until the reinforcements at least arrive.
Yeah, I think he survived the scariest phase. My goodness, if he didn't live that Cyclone at the very last minute, I think his Immortal falls, and then all of a sudden, he's got no HP there anymore. He's got no firepower. There's a good chance he starts losing a whole bunch of probes, and he would have been in all sorts of trouble. I still think he's in a little bit of trouble, Fear Dragon. Not if dying here, but I did think he took quite a bit of damage over the last minute. You know, he was just a bit out of position. This could have been a flawless hold if the medevac would have been found by the Phoenixes. Instead, it was all very chaotic, and this definitely works out in the favor of Clem.
Well, Phoenix are going to come on forward. They're looking for a potential lift up on that tank, but they can find it, and there it is going to come with the Colossus also to push back any of those Marines. So the siege tank gets taken care of, and it looks like ShoWTimE gets the cleanup he was looking for. Now, Clem, of course, already has these Marines and medevacs out on the middle of the map, so why not take them around for a little drop harass?
I like that ShoWTimE moved his Immortal and Colossus right on top of the tank by the time he unloaded it from the Phoenixes. So the tank wouldn't be able to fire the units. That's a cool move. But I still think this was all a little bit too chaotic on the side of ShoWTimE. Like, he has no idea there's still a medevac out. And yeah, you find a couple of Marines here. But okay, losing a Phoenix is absolutely not worth it. But there is a chance he's going to lose a couple of probes here too if Stim finishes up. It may look alright for ShoWTimE, but I don't think he's in that good of a spot. Unless he can prevent taking any damage from this drop, then it's all of a sudden not that bad.
Yeah, and remember, he's got mostly an Adept army with a few Colossus. Yeah, there were a few Phoenix that would help respond to this drop pretty quickly, but it actually takes a bit of time for ShoWTimE to actually respond to this kind of harassment. So you can see it takes a very long time for these units to make their way over to the main base. Finally, a recall comes out. Colossus finally get in range. The Phoenix are what actually get a recall to help deal with this medevac, but medevac makes his way over to the natural before maybe finding a little bit more damage and going down.
But look how much focus and priority this takes on the side of ShoWTimE. And this will allow Clem once again to move a lot of units to the other side of the map. Now at least the Colossi are in a decent position, so ShoWTimE will not completely fall apart here, but geez Louise, you can really see that Clem is stressing ShoWTimE out. The wall is not crumbling yet. He does have double forge. That's great for a Protoss. He does have a Templar Archives on the way. So eventually this Protoss army will become very powerful, but it's definitely a scary minute or two.
Yeah, I think ShoWTimE is one or two more big attacks away from just becoming a bit more of a fence rather than a wall, because Clem really does seem like he's finding all these little openings to do bits and pieces of damage. This big drop into the main base is going to be problematic because it also is on the high ground of that third, and with both of the forges over here right before those upgrades are about to finish, getting the armor upgrade as well, that is the one that you really want to have finish.
Yep, and all the Phoenixes but one have gone down, and that obviously makes it harder and harder to deal with these medevacs that are roaming around. At least Colossi can walk up and down cliffs, so that makes your life a little bit easier. That is it, I think, for the final Phoenix. No, it does live, but 7 probes going down. It could have been a lot worse, but losing the forge with +1 armor, that's a pretty big deal.
Yeah, I'd say one nice thing about ShoWTimE's position, like you were saying, the Colossus have been pretty effective. And the Colossus, I mean, they got the +1 weapon upgrade. He still is going to be able to get a +2 weapons. And remember, with how many medevacs Clem has been using to try and get these drops off and to move around, oh god, losing a Stalker is not ideal. But you know, the Viking count isn't exactly going to be very high. He's really relying on heavy numbers of Marine Marauder to just close the distance in on these Colossus. And oh no, as I say that, looks like he almost got an opportunity to do that, exactly that.
I know some people were worried what kind of Clem is going to show up to the Intel Extreme Masters. Will we see the best version of Clem, or is he going to choke? Well, so far, this is looking phenomenal what Clem is displaying us. He's everywhere at once. It feels like I'm watching a Korean Terran player at this point. He's just pushing an unreal pace. And I don't think ShoWTimE is playing bad. It's just that Clem is playing out of the ordinary.
This has become so problematic. Like you were saying, just complete chaos ensuing on the side of ShoWTimE. And it's so hard to rally everything together and deal with the constant pressure from every single angle. And you can see, even with the delayed reactions over there, for ShoWTimE to just see that there's an attack at his third. The Colossus is a little bit slower to respond. And now the Colossus is going to be potentially vulnerable over here. Already seeing some of the Archons going down. And Clem, of course, still has great macro behind all this, still has his 4th base mining heavily, has his 2-2 upgrades about to finish, and looks like he may once again be situated to potentially take a more direct fight sometime soon.
Yep. ShoWTimE does still have 80 probes, and despite all the chaos that went on, he got up to 4 bases. He has not been able to be aggressive at all ever since the Phoenixes were on the other side of the map, but like I said, sometimes you don't even want to throw away these units. ShoWTimE is like a minute away from actually finding himself in a pretty comfortable place, but I don't think Clemens wants to give him that time. At this point, there is a lot of Terran here in the center. The Observer does get the heads up. The shield batteries and cannons are not totally ready yet. Can we keep the Colossus alive? Can the wall hold one more time?
Well, the Viking count isn't super duper high, but they are starting to find some hits on a few of these Colossus, because Stalker count, frankly, isn't that high either until now. Stalkers get warped in on the back lines. Already seen one of the Colossus starting to fall here, but the shield batteries and cannons are starting to finish up now.
Yep, and that's actually going to make the hold a lot more doable. Yeah, the Stalker count was actually alright, but obviously there were so many things happening that ShoWTimE kind of spread his defenses out. Now he realizes that pretty much all the Terran units are in the center. I don't think Clem wants to fight near a battery with overcharge. That's a little bit risky. These Vikings are getting really big hits off though, and that Colossus that will live, die, live. In the end, it will fall. Not even the overcharge battery can save the day. And that means the rest of this Protoss army all of a sudden looks a little bit underwhelming, Fear Dragon.
Yeah, I mean, especially when you consider the delay in the upgrades. So ShoWTimE is sitting down one of those armor upgrades, and you think it's just basically gateway units? There's that one disruptor which is looking for that Hail Mary hit, and wow, a beautiful split there from Clem. 0 tags on that.
I don't know how you say not today in French, but that's pretty much what Clem just said. All that's left is a couple of Stalkers. The EMPs are landing in the center of this Stalker army. Zealots being warped in the front, but they will disappear real quick. I think we have one more Purification Nova, but that one too won't find too many connections. And I think that's all she wrote. GG. What a performance by Clem.